Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is having a great day. This is episode 24 of our Python series, and today we're going to be learning about logical operators in Python. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So what exactly are logical operators? Logical operators allow us to combine or modify conditions. In Python, there are three logical operators, and, or, and not. Let's take a look at each one of them. So we have and, or, and not. Let's start with the and operator. The and operator returns true only when both conditions are true. Let's demonstrate an example. So we can create a variable, let's call it age, and we'll assign a value 20 to it. And then we'll have a has_id variable, we'll initialize it to true. And we'll say print, let's say age is greater than or equal to 18. And then we can use the AND operator. And remember, the AND operator, guys, expects two conditions. So we can say has_id. So what we're basically saying, age must be greater than or equal to 18, and has_id must be equal to true. Now remember I said the AND operator returns true only when both conditions are true. So if we run our code, because both of these conditions are true, age is greater than or equal to 18, then it prints out true right there, as you guys can see. Let me show you guys another example. Suppose we changed age to, let's say, 16. What this will do, it will check to see if age is greater than or equal to 18. In this case, this condition right here would be false, but the has_id would be true since it is equal to true. Now remember I said and only returns true when both conditions are true, because one condition is going to be false whenever we run our code, and will just print out false, because both conditions need to be true in order for and to return a value of true. Now guys, we can also use the AND operator directly inside of an if statement. Let me demonstrate this to you guys. So let's create an if statement, and remember we need a condition right here. So we could say age is greater than or equal to, let's say, 18, and has_id. Then we could print a message like something like you can enter. And guys, what this will do, Python will check if the age of the person is greater than or equal to 18, which would be false in this case. And it will check if they also have an ID. If we run our code, nothing will get printed out. But let's let it print out something in that scenario. So we can have an else statement. And we can say print you cannot enter. And then if we run our code now, it will just print out you cannot enter, because the age is not greater than or equal to 18. Let's change the age and let's say to 20. And if we save our code, then we run it, you can see it says you can enter. So that's just the basics of using the AND logical operator, guys, with an if statement. Next, we have the OR operator. Unlike the AND operator, the OR operator returns true when at least one of the conditions is true. Here's an example. So we can have a variable, for example, let's say is weekend, and we can set it to true, and then we can have a is holiday variable, and we could set it to, let's say, false, and then we could do print, and then we could say is underscore weekend or is underscore holiday. And what this will do, guys, it remember that the or condition returns true as long as one of the conditions is true. So because is weekend is true, it will simply print out true. So if we run our code, you will see that we get an output of true onto the console. So here it is. Now, what if we changed one condition or made both conditions false? So is weekend is false, is holiday is false. If we run our code now, you'll see it prints out false because both conditions are false or none of the conditions are true. Now guys, just like the AND operator, we can also use the OR operator with an if statement. So let me demonstrate this. So we can say if, let's say if is underscore weekend or is underscore holiday, then we could say print you don't have to work today. And let's add a condition for whenever this expression evaluates to false. So we can say else, and we can do print, and we can say you must work today. And if we run our code, guys, because both of these conditions up here or in this expression also are false, and this will get evaluated to false, then only this portion of our if else statement will get printed out. So it will say you must work today. And if we change at least one of these variables up here to true, then it will say you don't have to work today. So you can see, even if we toggle both of them to true, it will still print out you don't have to work today. So guys, that's basically the basics of using if statements or if else statements with the OR operator. Finally, we have the NOT operator. The NOT operator reverses a Boolean value. So if something is true, NOT makes it false, and if something is false, NOT makes it true. Here's an example. So we can have a variable, let's say is raining, and we'll set it equal to true. And then we can say print NOT is underscore raining. And since the NOT operator reverses a Boolean value, this true inside of our variable will evaluate to false. So if we run our code, we should get false printed out onto the screen. So here we get false. And if we were to change this is raining value to false, since it reverses it or negates that value or condition, then we will get true printed out. Here's another example. All right, let's create a variable. Let's call it is logged in, and we'll set it equal to false. And we could say print not is underscore logged in. Since not reverses the Boolean value, the result that we will get will be true. So if we run our code, you see true gets printed out onto the screen. If we changed is logged in to true, it will become false because it negates or reverses the value. So you guys can see it right here. All right. So that's the basics, guys. Now let's talk about using the NOT operator with an if statement. So let's start with an example. So we can have our is raining, and we could set it equal to true. And then we could create an if statement, and we could say if is underscore raining, if not is underscore raining, then we could do print you can go outside. And then guys, in this case, if this expression in here becomes false, then we can say else print you cannot go outside. And if we run our code, guys, let me clear the screen. Yeah, if we run our code, you will see it will say you cannot go outside, because the not operator negates the value right in here, and then that becomes false. So this expression for this X statement, guys, will not get executed. So in this case, it will default and go right here and print you cannot go outside. So if we changed is raining to false, whenever the not operator runs right here, it gets reversed or negated, right? So then that evaluates to true. And then this will get printed out. It will say you can go outside. So we run the code. It says you can go outside. And that's the basics of the not operator, guys. Let's see how we can combine logical operators together. Let's begin with an example. So we can create a variable, let's say age, and we'll say 18. And then we will create a variable, let's say is bond, and we'll set it equal to false. And we'll also have another variable, let's say has underscore ID, and we'll set it equal to true. And then guys, to demonstrate combining the operators together, let's start with an if statement, and we can say if age, let's say the person is greater than or equal to 18, so we're checking if they're an adult, and they have an ID, so and has ID. So now guys, we can say and not is underscore bond. So essentially what we're doing, we're running multiple logical operators inside of this expression. So we're checking if age is greater than or equal to 18, or if the person is an adult and the person has an ID and the person is not bond. And then we can try to print out a message, you can enter, for example. And let's create an else statement for whenever this expression up here is not true. So we can simply do print you cannot enter. And if we run our code, guys, what will get printed out should be you can enter. So let's run our code. And we will see that it prints out you can enter. Now, suppose we changed one of these conditions to false. Let's change has ID to false. Remember, the AND operator, guys, requires everything to be true, right? So in this case, it will just print you cannot enter. And you can see it right there. Awesome. And if we even changed the age, guys, all right, let's change has ID to true, and we just make the age, let's say 16. And if we run the code, you will see that it prints out you cannot enter again. Alright, so that's how you actually combine logical operators. Another thing, guys, let's say we changed isBond to, let's say, true, and the person's age was an adult. Let's say age equals to 20. And let's say has ID is true and isBond is true. Because isBond is true, and I mean everything else is true, right? Except this not isBond condition right here. What will get printed out is you cannot enter. So if we run our code, it will say you cannot enter. Suppose we changed right here to a OR operator. Let's see what would get printed out. It will say you can enter, because what is basically happening, guys, is first it is checking if the age is greater than or equal to 18 for the person and the person has an ID, or if the person is not bond, right? And in this case, one condition is true. So even if the person is bond, it will still print out they can enter. But let's say we changed both. Let's say we change one of this condition up here to be false. Let's say we made both conditions up here false, and then we set isBond to true. What will happen is it will just print out you cannot enter, because these two conditions right here gets evaluated to false, right? And not isBond would give us false. So because none of these conditions up here are true, it defaults to you cannot enter. If we changed isBond to, let's say, false, what would happen is it will print out you can enter, even though this condition right here, guys, is not true. So if we run our code, you'll see it will say you can enter, even though this is not met. So we can change this back to an and now everything will get evaluated properly. You cannot enter because your age is not an adult and you do not have an ID, and you are not bond, but because these are false, guys, it will just go to you cannot enter. But if we changed isBond to true, it will just go to you cannot enter. And we could even change back the age to an adult, and it would say you cannot enter anyways. We could change has ID, however, to true also, but because this still evaluates to false, it will print you cannot enter. But if we get rid of the isBond equals to true, then it will print you can enter. So guys, that's how we basically combine logical operators. So let's quickly recap what we have learned. The AND operator, it requires all conditions to be true, while the OR operator requires at least one condition to be true, while the NOT operator essentially reverses a Boolean value. These operators allow us to create more complex conditions within our program. And that's it for today's episode on logical operators in Python. We learned how to use AND, OR, and NOT operators to combine and modify conditions. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.